We're excited today to be joined by Christian Easterday of Hot Chili Limited. Christian, for anyone who doesn't know Hot Chili, could you briefly tell us where you operate and more about your assets?
So Hot Chili is one of the most advanced copper developers on the ASX, but we're dual listed onto the TSXV. We have a very large copper asset on the Chilean coastline called Costa Fuego that we've been developing for over a decade and advancing to a resource base that is around 1 billion tonnes, and more importantly, a development that we've just wrapped the first financial numbers around, and it certainly looks very impressive in a development pipeline which is very short for the world at the moment. So very unique to be sitting here with one of the major copper developments in the world, and certainly very pleased with the outcomes of that PEA, which no doubt was discussed today.
Now, first, I want to start high level on the copper market itself. Could you talk to us about the macro drivers that make you confident the world needs new copper resources, and what future pricing will support these resources made in projects like yours?
Sure. Look, there's both a supply and demand side to this growing thematic, and what I like to refer to as the potential third commodity of the 21st century that is about to, I guess a demand shift is occurring in the copper space, primarily driven by net zero ambitions of the world to decarbonise and that growing usage of copper in renewables to electric vehicles and really the electrification of everything. So what we see is a market that is around about 22 million tonnes per annum, with a forecast demand increase on a per annum basis of anywhere between around 6 million to 7 million tonnes of additional supply required by 2030. Now, the problem that we see, and having been in this business for nearly 15 years, is we see a distinct lack of new supply options for the copper sector. And that's really overlain by a significant underinvestment in the industry, on a development pipeline that is very short. We only have a handful of these projects that are around 100,000 tonnes per annum of supply that are coming. And what that means is you have a significant deficit between new supply and new demand, and that deficit on a per annum basis is anywhere between around 4 million to 5 million tonnes per annum. And against all of this is a market that is already seeing a decline in production through decreasing grades and really mines that are aging significantly. Some of these mines have been around for 80, 90 years that are still supplying most of the world's copper.
Got it. That's a very helpful overview. Now, I just wanted to get into funding. So you guys are fully funded for the next 18 months after signing a royalty deal with Osisko Gold Royalties. What do you plan to accomplish, and where would you like to be within the resource, the permits, etc., by 12 to 18 months from now?
Yeah, very simply, this is a growth and development phase for Hot Chili on its pathway to have this large-scale 100,000 tonne per annum copper project, 50,000 ounce per annum gold project into financing decision in and around 2026. So we're moving over the next 18 months to deliver a pre-feasibility following on from the PEA that we've just completed. We're taking this next opportunity to look if we can scale this project towards 150,000 tonnes per annum, and that's very meaningful for us in terms of the potential cash costs on the project starting to approach and push into first quartile cash costs, so a very competitive place to be if you're going to build a large-scale copper project. And most importantly, that will be facilitated by an expansion plan that is driven around a 30,000 metre program about to kick off, also further engineering work to optimise this PEA and look at the potential for a large pit option on one of those big deposits that will be going through a central processing hub, and also further regional consolidation. So, 12 to 18 months of funding buys us a lot, and the Osisko funding arrangement was certainly extremely competitive in maintaining the company's capital structure as we make this important push towards financing what will be one of a handful of major projects coming into production this decade.
Great, that's helpful. Now, as I looked at your list of stockholders, I noticed that a big player in the space, Glencore, is a major shareholder, and you have an offtake deal with them. Could you tell us a bit more about how that deal came about? And can we assume that they'll help fund part of those project construction costs, given that they're committed to the rules around having to maintain the percentage of equity ownership if you do raise money down the road? Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. So, look, Glencore, we're very pleased to have Glencore's endorsement, just as we're very pleased to have now Cisco's endorsement in the North American market on this large-scale asset. And, you know, firstly, we sit in a very unique space. As I mentioned, there's only a handful of these projects available and being pushed through into production this decade, but there's very few that sit at low altitude with low risk and over a decade of permitting advance, so that we sit with a project that is almost taking care of every hurdle that you need to address on your way to building a mine. So to have Glencore's support, to have their 9% shareholding or 9.9% shareholding, you know, it's a great endorsement. It's significant support for the company. In terms of financing going forward, they're obviously a shareholder at this point. We also, subsequent to their investment, almost 2 years ago now, certainly 20 months ago, we were able to sign them up as a very key partner for offtake. This was a deal that was really quite unique for Glencore. Most Glencore transactions have life of mine 100% offtake that are associated with those investments, but we have really Glencore in a strategic shareholding position. The offtake was only put on 60% of our concentrate and only on the first 8 years. So it really retained our ability to have the rest of the offtake for financing requirements with Hot Chili, but more importantly, in parallel, it gave us a partnership with the largest offtaker in the copper sector, handling I think over 50% of the global book. So certainly a very good de-risker in terms of our future sales of that initial 8 years of production against benchmark terms.
Good, that's helpful. That sounds like a very unique deal there. Now, I just want to get to valuation for a minute, because in your deck you have some really great charts comparing your peers. And I noticed that your stock trades at a significant discount to your resource and the NPV of Costa Fuego. So what are the catalysts that will close that gap over time in your view?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that we've been trying to tackle for a while. We're really a very big fish in a very small pond in Australia. It's not known for producing large copper developers and indeed for funding large copper developments. So we certainly started to address that with our dual listing into the TSX about 18 months ago. And the restructure of our capital structure and tightening everything up so that we could be a large-scale developer that could compete against some of the senior names in the North American space, the Philos, the Solarises, the Los Andes, the SolGolds, and that's really the type of peer projects that we sit around. But this gap between valuation on the North American market compared to the Australian market has really created a big opportunity on arbitrage for us to close. And I'm very pleased that now that the PEA has gone out and the first time the economics have been rolled around this really low risk, low elevation project in Chile that we're developing in Costa Fuego, that we're already starting to see that valuation gap starting to close. But you know, when you're sitting at a discount of 4 times on valuation of resource metal in the ground, or 3 to 3.5 times on proportion of NPV that you trade at, we've got a significant, growth story here in joining the ranks of our peers in North America on their valuations. And over the past 2 or 3 weeks since we put this out, we're now starting to see the market really starting to appreciate what the company holds and ultimately what that represents for near-term value creation for our shareholders.
Oh, okay, that was very helpful color. Thank you on that topic. Now, I want to move to operations for a minute and just talk about what the remaining steps are to bring Costa Fuego to first production.
Yeah, the pathway is very clear now. We've delivered within guidance and on time, and actually, we really shot the lights out with the PEA, producing the lowest capital intensity project in the development pipeline outside of a major miner. So this is a very low cost project to build. The operating cost is extremely competitive, and all of those advantages of not requiring high altitude desalination and water pipelines to be built has really baked that in. So firstly, we sit with a project that's going to put out an extreme amount of revenue or metal production, as I said, around 100,000 tonnes of copper and 50,000 ounces of gold a year, 16-year mine life, something generating around 850 million US per annum at long-term price deck of around 385. So what we now have is a real opportunity with the most leveraged copper equity in the Australian market. We're the only 100,000 tonne equity play for copper amongst developers, producers and explorers. There is a vacuum in the Australian market, and currently Hot Chili is waving the flag for the Australian copper sector by scale of production and by scale of resource. But what we really want to do is really wave the flag for the new wave of major copper developments coming into the pipeline to address the decarbonisation requirements of the world. When you only have a handful of these things and you have a thematic for rising copper prices in the medium term, these projects are extremely leveraged. Every company talks about leverage, everyone has it. It's about who is holding the most metal when the wind starts to blow, or who has the largest sail that is put up. Hot Chili for the ASX players, and certainly globally, is now displaying a project that is going to punch very heavy for that leverage equation. So underlying that, we have an extreme leverage equation that is going to be, I guess, delivered against a roadmap that has us producing a pre-feasibility next year, optimised and hopefully expanded, a submission of an environmental impact assessment to the Chilean government, and ultimately aligning ourselves for 2026 with the financing decision and definitive feasibility for the project. So it's one of the shortest timeframes to production amongst the senior copper developers in the world outside of the current supply coming in from the majors.
That's a great perspective there. Now, you're getting into the most important milestones, so let's flesh that out. I'm an investor. I'm looking over the next 12 to 18 months. What do you think are the most important next few milestones that I should be looking for?
Well, look, in the next few weeks, we'll be kicking off a major 30,000 metre drilling program focused on growth. Firstly, at Cordillera, our new porphyry discovery, which has transformed the company's resource book and has us situated with about a 930 million tonne resource base. We'll be looking to expand that resource late this year, and in parallel also deliver a PEA on a potential large pit option for this project. So we're dealing with 100% open pit ore sources rather than the current PEA, which has 65% of our ore coming out of open pits and also 35% of our ore coming out of an underground. So I guess towards the end of this year, within the next 6 months, we have two key catalysts: resource upgrade and another study or optimisation. And going into next year, it is all about the delivery of that pre-feasibility and also submitting our environmental impact assessment. That really has us really focused on delivering this into financing in 2026. And so I guess everything is kind of aligning for Hot Chili. We see the copper market starting to probably undergo a lot of stress in 2025, 2026, after the current wave of supply from the majors starts to dissipate and we start to see a growing deficit. So that is very, very fortunate timing for this project, and so we're certainly not sitting on our hands and missing that opportunity.
Great, Christian. This has been a really fascinating update and interview about your assets. It sounds like you guys have a unique value proposition in the copper space. So we're very excited to follow your success over the next 12 to 18 months and beyond. And thank you so very much for being with us. And this was Mr. Christian Easterday. He's the Managing Director and CEO of Hot Chili Limited. Thanks for watching.